Proof that she was in the car, proof that she was injured, and proof that the very paparazzi that chased her into the tunnel were the ones that were taking photographs of her lying half dead on the backseat of the car.
Princess Diana's final moments have always been surrounded by mystery. But what many people don't know is that she made one last phone call just hours before the crash.
The princes cover a lot of ground in this documentary, but it's their openness about their final conversation with their mother that's the key revelation. It's certainly the one generating all the headlines over here today.
It wasn't to a royal, and it wasn't what anyone expected. Her words during that call were raw, emotional, and chilling.
Her 20th anniversary year feels like a good time to remember, all the good things about her and hopefully provide maybe a different side to her that others haven't seen before.
Revealing a side of Diana that the world rarely saw. Some say it sounded like a goodbye. Others believe she knew something was wrong. But what exactly did she say? And who was on the other end of the line? Join us as we uncover the haunting truth behind this phone call. The final phone calls and a chilling premonition. On that quiet August night in 1997, inside the elegant walls of the Ritz Hotel in Paris, Princess Diana was not a royal caught in scandal or a figure trapped by fame. She was simply a woman in love. After years of heartbreak, headlines, and loneliness, she had found a sense of peace with Dodi Fayed. They were inseparable that summer, enjoying the kind of freedom Diana hadn't known in years. The cameras still followed them everywhere, but behind the scenes, she was relaxed, smiling more, and even looking ahead to the future with hope. Because for once, she wasn't just being watched, she was finally living. And during those final hours in Paris, Diana picked up the phone not because of fear or panic, but because she felt something warm inside her. She wanted to connect with the people who mattered most. So she made a few calls. Keep watching to find out why those final conversations left the world in silence. The first call she made that evening was to her sons, William and Harry. They were spending the summer at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, staying with their father and the Queen. Diana loved calling them, even if it was just for a quick chat. That night, it was just a short check-in. The boys were busy playing and laughing with their cousins. They didn't think much of it. Harry, who later said that it still haunts him because of the way he rushed through that last call with his mother. He didn't know it was going to be the last time he'd hear her voice. And William, too, has echoed the same painful memory. He remembers feeling like he was in a hurry and didn't give her the full attention she deserved. And now, after years, both brothers carry that regret with them. It was a simple call, just a normal "hi mum" kind of moment, but it turned out to be the last thread of connection between a mother and her sons before everything changed forever. But here's the most intriguing part. Diana's second known call that night was very different. It wasn't to a family member, but to her close friend and trusted journalist, Richard Kay. This wasn't a short call either. It lasted somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes. And Richard later shared that Diana was in great spirits. She wasn't scared or nervous. In fact, she was excited. She talked about coming back to London the next day, about how she felt hopeful and full of plans. It didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like someone who finally wanted to step into the light after years of shadows. She spoke of her humanitarian work, her ideas for change, and how she wanted to use her platform for good. And most of all, she sounded like someone who believed her best days were still ahead of her. That's what made the conversation so heartbreaking in hindsight, because nobody could have guessed that hours later, everything would be gone. And just days before all this, something else had happened that shaped that night. A tabloid had published the first clear paparazzi photos of Diana and Dodi together, confirming their relationship to the world. The pictures showed them on a yacht, laughing and kissing and enjoying their time in the Mediterranean sun. But for Diana, who had spent so many years living under tight royal rules, This was freedom. She was in love, and she didn't have to hide it anymore. But the public attention came with danger. The press began following them even more aggressively, turning what was supposed to be a romantic Paris getaway into a chaotic media storm. That's why later that night, Diana and Dodi made a last-minute decision. They didn't want to leave the Ritz in the front car, which the paparazzi were watching. So they planned a secret escape. They got into an armored Mercedes, hoping to slip away quietly. But they weren't alone. A small group of paparazzi had caught on, and within moments, the chase began. The love-filled phone calls, the cheerful conversations, and the relaxed mood all vanished. And her peaceful night was replaced with panic, speed, and flashing lights in every direction. The car sped through the streets of Paris, heading into the Alma Tunnel. And by the time the world woke up the next morning, everything had changed. The woman who had just spoken about her future, who had laughed with her sons and dreamed of returning to London, was gone. It's these final conversations that paint a haunting picture. Because Diana didn't sound like someone who was worried or running. She sounded like someone finally at peace. She was thinking about tomorrow, not fearing it. She was focused on love, on her sons and on her future. And that's what makes the end so hard to understand. Some people have wondered if Diana felt something that night. Not fear exactly, but maybe an inner knowing that something wasn't right. She had spoken before about being watched and followed, and even in the weeks before her death, she had expressed concerns about being targeted. Whether that was just anxiety or something more, we may never truly know. But what we do know is that her final words were filled with love, hope, warmth, and not fear. Those last calls were not just conversations, they were final moments of connection between Diana and the people she loved. And they've stayed frozen in time ever since. But stay with us as we take a deeper look at what truly happened next, and why that night still raises questions to this day. The crash, the theories, and the unanswered questions. When the black Mercedes entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris on the early minutes August 31st, 1997, no one inside knew it would be their final journey. The city was quiet outside, and inside the car was a woman whose voice had reached across continents, and a man whose name had just begun appearing beside hers in headlines. That night ended not with a return to London or the smile Diana had promised over the phone, but with flashing sirens, shattered glass, and a world thrown into grief. The wreckage left behind in that tunnel was more than just steel and broken headlights. It was a moment frozen in time, the kind that divides history into before and after. Diana, Princess of Wales, was no longer just a public figure. She had become a symbol of what felt like a preventable tragedy, one that was too fast, too violent, and too strange for people to simply accept as just another car accident. However, by the time the official news reached the public, the streets were already filled with stunned silence. In the early hours of that morning, word began to spread about a crash, then the names, and then confirmation. The reaction came like a wave. People cried openly, radios fell quiet, television anchors stumbled through their words. But something about it felt deeply wrong, not just sad. It felt unbelievable. And over the next few days after her death, the world mourned in a way that hadn't been seen before. Outside Kensington Palace, flowers covered the gates until one couldn't even see the metal bars anymore. People who had never met Diana lined up to say goodbye, writing cards, lighting candles, and whispering prayers. In countries all over the world, many came together in silence and sorrow, even though they had only known her through screens. Her death felt personal. It reached across borders and touched people who had never cared much about royalty before. But while millions mourned, questions started rising quietly in the background. the details surrounding the crash were blurry. The car had been traveling at high speed, with paparazzi chasing it. Henry Paul, the driver, was accused of being drunk. Dodi Fayed was declared dead at the scene. Diana was rushed to the hospital and later died from internal injuries. The only survivor was her bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, who wore a seatbelt and suffered major facial trauma. These facts were delivered in press releases and official briefings, but something about them didn't sit right with everyone. The first unsettling detail was how quickly the narrative was formed. Within hours, the story being told was clear. The driver was drunk, the paparazzi were reckless, and it was an accident. But people remembered seeing footage of Henri Paul walking through the Ritz Hotel shortly before they left. He didn't look drunk. In fact, he looked composed, calm, and smiling. And the surveillance tapes didn't show a man staggering or out of control. Then, the toxicology report was released. It claimed Henri Paul had alcohol levels over 3 times the legal limit. But some experts questioned the accuracy. Was there a mix-up in samples? Could there have been tampering? Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, was among the loudest voices refusing to accept the official explanation. He believed from the beginning that the crash was no accident, but something much darker, like a cover-up, or possibly even an assassination. Adding to the suspicion was the mention of a white Fiat Uno. Witnesses claimed to have seen the small car near the tunnel exit. Some believed it clipped the Mercedes and caused it to lose control. Paint marks on the wreckage seemed to support this, but the car was never found, and no driver ever came forward. For years, the mystery Fiat became a central piece of speculation, symbolizing a missing puzzle piece the public never got to see. People also pointed out how slowly help arrived. Diana didn't die instantly. She was alive when paramedics reached her and was conscious enough to speak. But instead of rushing her directly to the nearest hospital, the ambulance stopped for long periods, reportedly to stabilize her. The route taken was also questioned, as was the delay. In a city like Paris, with hospitals minutes away, why did it take over an hour to get her there? And would she have survived if things had moved faster? However, these conspiracy theories grew stronger when more details surfaced from Diana's past, especially a letter she had written to her butler, Paul Burrell, in 1993. In the letter, she warned that there were plans to tamper with her car, cause brake failure, and ultimately lead to a crash that would result in a fatal head injury. She believed someone wanted her dead. The handwriting was confirmed to be hers, and the letter was written 4 years before the crash. At the time, many dismissed it as paranoia, but in the years that followed her death, people began revisiting that note. If she had feared this exact outcome, if she'd put it into writing, then how could anyone ignore it? Was it just a tragic coincidence, or had she sensed something that others refused to see? Also, her relationship with Dodi Fayed was another point of tension. Some believed that if Diana had married Dodi, a Muslim man, it would have created a scandal the royal establishment couldn't accept. There were even rumors, though unproven, that Diana was pregnant at the time of her death. Mohammed Al-Fayed pushed this theory heavily, claiming it was part of the motive behind the crash. But no medical evidence ever confirmed a pregnancy. In 2004, British authorities launched Operation Paget, a massive investigation into all the conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's death. It took nearly 3 years to complete, and it involved hundreds of interviews, scientific tests, and legal reviews. When it was concluded in 2006, the report stated that there was no conspiracy. The crash, and it claimed, was a result of drunk driving, speed, and paparazzi pressure. But even with that conclusion, public doubt never truly faded. In 2007, a formal inquest was opened. Over 6 months, jurors heard from over 250 witnesses. It was one of the longest and most public inquests in British legal history. And after the final verdict, many were unsatisfied. If the inquest admitted it wasn't just an accident, then why was no one held responsible? The unanswered questions kept stacking up. None of the paparazzi were ever convicted, even though some were reported to have taken photos of the wreckage before offering any help. The royal family remained silent during the critical hours that followed the crash. And despite multiple investigations carried out over the years, there was still a deep sense that the full truth had never been revealed. And for some, it wasn't just about the crash itself. It was about the pattern. Diana had always been treated differently. She was adored by the public, yet treated as a problem behind palace walls. She was compassionate, emotional, and open to everything the royal image wasn't supposed to be. She wasn't just the people's princess. She was a woman who refused to play by their rules. And that, some believe, made her dangerous. But here's the most intriguing part: the bitter truth and a legacy that endures. When the British inquest ended in 2008, it officially closed the legal case around Princess Diana's death. But for millions of people, the heartbreak never really went away. The jury ruled that Diana and Dodi Fayed died because of unlawful actions. Their driver, Henry Paul, had been reckless, and the paparazzi had chased them aggressively. The verdict gave a clear explanation in legal terms, but it did not take away the grief. And for many, it still did not feel like the full truth had been uncovered. Even though more than 10 years had passed since that night in Paris, people kept asking questions. Could Diana have been protected better? Was there something more that could have saved her life? Experts looked at every moment of that night and tried to piece together what really went wrong. But beyond the flashing cameras and the chaos in the tunnel, something deeper was felt. It was the painful loss of a woman whose presence had meant so much to so many. Diana had a rare kind of warmth. She was not like the royals people were used to. Instead of keeping a distance, she reached out. She visited the sick, comforted the dying, and spent time with people who felt forgotten. She did not just show up for photographs. She connected with people in a way that felt honest and human. So when she died, it felt like the world had lost someone who truly cared. In the months before her death, Diana's life was changing. She had stepped away from royal duties and was starting to live more freely. Her relationship with Dodi Fayed was new, and though many people focused on the gossip, for her it seemed to bring happiness and peace. She was also thinking about her future and how she could use her platform for good. She had ideas about launching a foundation that would focus on helping children and removing landmines from war-torn areas. Her work with landmine awareness was not just for attention. She went into dangerous places, walked through minefields, and held injured children. She used her public image to bring attention to a serious issue. And her efforts made a difference. Just months after she passed, the Ottawa Treaty was signed to ban landmines. She did not live to see it happen, but many believed it would not have been possible without her voice. Her actions had real impact, and they saved lives. At home, Diana never stopped being a devoted mother. Even after the divorce, she made sure her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, experienced life beyond royal walls. She took them to homeless shelters, to hospitals, and even to fast food restaurants. She wanted them to see what life was like for regular people. She believed that kindness and understanding came from experience, and she tried to give them that. Her way of parenting was thoughtful, loving, and full of intention. That is why her final phone calls are still remembered with such emotion. In those last conversations, she did not talk about fear or danger. She laughed. She made plans. She talked about seeing her sons again. She sounded happy and full of life. And that is what makes her passing feel so cruel. Not because she expected it, but because she didn't. She truly believed that there was more ahead. So when the jury announced that the crash had been caused by gross negligence, it brought a kind of legal justice. But it did not answer the larger question of what the world had lost. People were no longer just asking how Diana died. They were beginning to wonder what she could have gone on to do if she had lived. Diana had already started to change what it meant to be a royal. She used her platform to help people instead of just following tradition. Her popularity did not come from drama or power. It came from empathy. And over time, that empathy only became stronger and more inspiring. When she died, it left a space that no one else could fill. The charities she supported struggled without her. Campaigns that had once had her voice behind them lost their energy. For a while, it felt like something bright had faded. But slowly, her legacy began to grow in other ways. Not through large ceremonies or endless tributes, but through people, through the ones she had inspired, and most of all, through her sons. William and Harry have both spoken many times about how much their mother shaped them. William has focused on mental health and the environment. Harry has worked closely with veterans and created the Invictus Games. Their paths are different, but their values reflect the lessons their mother taught them, and they are still carrying her spirit forward, in their own way. Outside of her family, Diana's name is still tied to compassion, strength, and change. Her memory is alive in every hospital she visited, every child she held, and every cause she helped. Unlike many public figures whose impact fades over time, hers has only grown. People still talk about her, not because of her title, but because of how she made them feel. She showed the world what real empathy looks like. She cared deeply, and it showed in her actions. That is why people still call her the People's Princess. It was never just a title. It was a reflection of the life she lived. She did not stay hidden in the palace. She walked into difficult places, met people in their hardest moments, and treated them with dignity. This is Diana's true legacy. Not just the sorrow of her loss, but the power of her life. She showed us that kindness matters, that empathy can move mountains, and that even the smallest act of love can echo across time. So, do you think Diana's legacy would have changed the future of the monarchy if she had lived? And what do you believe Diana would be doing today if she were still alive? Drop it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.